Now, top EU officials have joined a growing chorus of condemnation after an Israeli airstrike on a school compound killed dozens in Gaza City. The EU's top diplomat, Josep Borrell, expressed his horror at the attack, which Gazan officials say killed more than 90 people sheltering in the school. Egypt and Qatar are demanding an urgent investigation. The U.S. has said it is, quote, deeply concerned about the strike. Israel has repeatedly claimed that Hamas uses schools as cover in the wake of the October 7th terror attacks.
Tabain school reduced to ruins after an Israeli airstrike in Gaza. According to an official from Gaza's Hamas-run government, around 6,000 displaced people were seeking shelter in the compound at the time. Witnesses say the school came under attack while people were offering dawn prayers.
Israel, as usual, didn't give a warning. It strikes regardless of whether they're children, women, young, or older adults. These were peaceful people in the mosque. People were praying, washing. Some were sleeping upstairs, including children, women, and older people. The missile hit them without any warning. First one missile, then another one. We recovered them as body parts.
The Israeli military has confirmed the strike, saying it hit a Hamas command and control center embedded within the site. It says numerous steps were taken to mitigate the risk of harming civilians. Many of the casualties were rushed to Gaza City's Al-Ali hospital.
They dropped a missile on them while they were just praying. Fear God, people. Fear God, Arabs. Fear God.
The strike comes at a time when mediators, Egypt, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia, are pushing to resume ceasefire talks. But Egypt's foreign ministry says that, quote, the deliberate killing of Gaza civilians shows Israel has no intention of ending the war.
Alexandra, Saieh is head of humanitarian policy and advocacy at the organization Save the Children. I asked her what she has heard from her contacts in Gaza.
My colleagues this morning told me that there are still bodies trapped under the rubble of this destroyed school. Families have been picking up pieces of their dismembered family members in plastic bags. There are reports of more than 100 people killed, but it's difficult to verify these numbers because families are essentially picking up body parts. This is the deadliest attack that we've seen, likely since October, on a school. But we are seeing Israeli attacks on schools almost every single week in recent months. And it's important to note that the families that were sheltering in the school were there because they have nowhere else to go. So many buildings, homes in Gaza have been destroyed. Parts of Gaza are uninhabitable. And this is the only place that families had to try to seek refuge. It's just absolutely horrific. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is a normalization of something that should never be normalized.
With schools a regular target, is there any safe space left in Gaza?
There is no safe space in Gaza. There's nowhere safe for people to go. I mean, even, Save the Children has an office in Middle Gaza. And even there, a few meters away from our office, there were airstrikes. And so there's no safe space in Gaza. There's no safe space for children. There's no safe space for aid workers. This is the conflict that has seen the most number of aid workers killed on record. So these attacks are happening where children are sheltering, where families are sheltering, and where aid organizations are providing services.
Now, Gaza is in ruins. Nearly everybody has been displaced at least once since the start of the war. Many of them, of course, children. Are we looking at a lost generation here?
Children, what we hear from their parents is that the children have no hope for the future. It's not only that we're seeing children killed every day, but they're being maimed, they're losing their limbs due to the use of explosive weapons in densely populated areas. And when they lose their limbs, there's no physiotherapy for them, there's no medical care that's able to help them rehabilitate. And on top of that, the infrastructure that children rely on to prosper in the future have been destroyed. A record number of schools have been destroyed, hospitals have been destroyed. They've been deprived of essential supplies to provide medical assistance. We are still seeing aid, including medical supplies, obstructed from coming in and obstructed from being distributed across Gaza to people in need. And so what we hear every single day is that parents say their children have no hope for the future, especially when there is absolutely no sign that things are slowing down.
Well, thank you for joining us on DW News. That is Alexandra Saieh from Save the Children. We appreciate your time today. Let's speak to DW's correspondent, Tania Krämer, joining us now from Jerusalem. Tania, we've just seen some of the footage of the aftermath of the airstrikes there. What has Israel said about this?
Well, Israel's military maintains that it was a place where Hamas and Islamic Jihad operatives were using basically as their command center, the school and mosque compound where people were forced to shelter. Many people have been displaced so many times and they're sheltering in those schools. Now, a statement this morning already said that the IDF, the military, had struck with precision-guided missiles. It also claimed, we heard this also repeatedly in other strikes, Hamas for operating within civilian shelters, basically taking people as human shields. And the military spokesperson also questioned the numbers that were given out by the health authorities in Gaza about the number of casualties. Now, having said that, this is not the first strike that we are seeing. The UN's Human Rights Office released a statement today and said they have recorded over 20 strikes on schools in the last month alone since July 4th. And they also have said, you know, while it is, of course, would be a grave violation if, according to international humanitarian law, if armed groups use these schools, also Israel has an obligation to international humanitarian law, and they have to look at questions like proportionality and taking precautions. So what we're hearing from eyewitnesses there on the ground, there are these casualties, there are many injured, they have burns, many have lost limbs, and this comes, of course, on the backdrop of a very difficult situation in Gaza's hospitals that have difficulties to deal with such mass casualty events.
Tania, today, Egypt said that Israel's, quote, deliberate killing of unarmed Palestinians shows that it lacks a political will to end the war in Gaza. What impact do you think this strike will have on ceasefire talks? We are expecting a new round this Thursday.
Well, I'm not so sure what difference this strike will make, as we've seen other strikes on schools in recent weeks. But of course, it underlines the need for a ceasefire. And we've heard these condemnations, especially also here in the region, from Egypt, from Jordan, from the United Arab Emirates, but also from the EU. But of course, for people in Gaza, these are mainly words. It doesn't really change the situation for them. So last week, we heard from the mediators from Qatar, from Egypt, also from the United States, that they have rescheduled talks or scheduled talks for next Thursday. We also got a confirmation from the Israeli side, from the Prime Minister's office, that they will send a delegation. But we're also hearing from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that the war will only end when Hamas is removed from power. We also hear from sources within Hamas that they're also studying a proposal. But it's very difficult at this point to understand where those talks stand. You know, whether they have any chance of success, also given the situation in the region, where the region is waiting for some sort of or possible retaliation by Hezbollah or Iran against Israel. But it's all connected, of course, what is going on in Gaza. So it's very hard to understand where those talks will be going.
Well, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed there. That is Tania Krämer, our correspondent, reporting today from Jerusalem.